Welcome to the Rethink and Return podcast. My name is Jason Shepard. Every week, we rethink things and return to God's original intention and His design. We generally do 2 recordings a week. One, we revisit a passage of Scripture that thousands of people are studying together in a Sunday gathering or in a house church, and we're just going to dig more deeply into these things that we didn't get to talk about enough or want to talk about more that we're wrestling with. And then we do another recording where we're just working out leadership things, being a pastor and ministry or leading stuff, and wrestling with tensions of how we live like that in our world today. So we'd love for you to like this, subscribe to it, share it with other people. Enjoy the podcast. We'll see you soon. Hey, thanks for joining us for the Rethink and Return podcast. We do a couple of these a week. One time we talk about a passage of Scripture, and another time we just have some leadership conversations. If I get the lucky chance of having somebody that I love come into town or drive across town, and today we did, I'd like to introduce you to Jeff Wells. Hey, Jeff, thanks for hanging out.
Glad to be here, Jason.
We've known each other like decades now. 2 decades, I think.
Long time. I think you were about, 15?
I wish that would make me 35. But Jeff, I've worked for you, and now we're friends. I don't work for you. You can't fire me from anything. But,
safe.
You've been a lot of things for me. So would you just tell everybody just a little bit about like who you are, what you do, a little bit about your life?
Okay. I pastor Woods Edge Community Church in the Woodlands, Spring.
Yeah.
Married to Gail for 45 years next month.
That's awesome.
Got 3 kids who are all married and 9 grandkids, which is the best part.
Yeah.
And that's about it, Jason.
That's awesome.
That's it.
That's a good story.
Right.
So I entered your life and got to know you when I went to work at Woods Edge.
Yes.
So you were the first non-Baptist church I worked at. In fact,
You
Woods
moved
Edge.
up, didn't you?
Well, it was in a lot of ways. So 3 times, this is the third time, somebody that worked on your team had reached out to me twice before about an opportunity to work at Woods Edge.
Okay.
And so in both times, I'm like, man, I was so Baptist, it scared me that you weren't. You're meeting at a college, baptizing people in pools. I'm like, who are these freaks,
Who are these guys?
And so, but man, the third time it was the right time for a lot of reasons. And I tell people, I had lunch with a mutual friend, somebody from from Woods Edge, who still is a mentor to me, and he and I were talking, Armand. Just about how God used, my time in Woods Edge to affect my life.
How long were you there, Jason? How long were you on staff?
I think 6 years.
6 years.
During the transition from.
But we've stayed close friends. In fact, Jason, I think we're closer than we've ever been.
Well, yeah, I don't have to do what you tell me to do now.
That's right.
That's helpful.
You could like me now.
You can like me.
I enjoy our friendship.
Me too. Jeff, working at Woods Edge really changed my life for so many reasons. But, going through some of the biggest trial of my life while I was with you, and then how God used Woods Edge in my life in so many ways. But it's really unusual. I think for people who are watching this, we're almost exactly 20 years apart. Yeah, right. You're the older one, if anybody's wondering. And we're 20 years apart, and the smarter and wiser one, which nobody's wondering about that. But also we have continued to have on the calendar. We keep most of them like
right.
we did today.
Monthly lunch. Jason bought today.
I did.
It was expensive.
I'm like, hey, you do a podcast maybe.
He took me to Whataburger.
Yeah. So and you invited me to Israel first time I went with you, and we've done some other ran into you in Rome with one of our elders, and
right.
you arrived.
George Booth.
But I count you a friend,
yeah.
as well as a mentor, as well as a pastor to me. So I'm glad we're having this conversation.
Well, good to be here, Jason.
The center of the target for this talk that I think about in my mind, there are a lot of people who would watch this way outside the center, but I think about a 35-year-old pastor. So a 25-year-old guy could reach to him, or a 51-year-old guy like me. So we're thinking about young pastors who are pastoring, and you and I both started churches.
Right.
And I like to say one of the hardest things to do is start a church, verifiably so.
Yeah.
Statistically so, but I actually think it's harder to stay. So starting is hard, staying is harder.
Wow.
What do you think about that comment? What is true about both of those things? Starting is hard, but staying is harder.
Well, interesting, Jason. I always say this about church planting. It's the most difficult thing you can do and the most exciting thing you can do. And I have a heart, whenever I hear someone starting a church, even starting a business, because it is somewhat parallel.
Yeah.
My heart goes out to them because
Yeah.
they're willing to stick their neck out, and they may fail.
Yeah.
And I started 3 myself, and one of them failed. So my heart goes out to them. But that's it. I've never thought about it, Jason, that staying is harder. But, I think about it, Jason, our first 10 years were hard here.
Yeah.
Maybe I didn't think about it, Jason, because my background is a distance runner, and that's just the way God wired me. I'm just going to endure.
No matter what.
I'm going to outlast all my critics.
That's right.
And, so,
Yeah.
but at a certain point, it got easier again. Has yours turned the corner where it's easier now?
Thankfully. I mean, Jeff, when I started Church Project, you and I talked about this at lunch today. When you started the church, you didn't have another pastor who was reaching out to you. No. You moved to the Woodlands. You planted Church Project. There weren't other pastors going, "Hey, Jeff, glad you're here.
Yeah,
how can I help you?"
Yeah. I know, not a soul. It's interesting. But today there's more of a spirit of collegiality.
Yeah.
In the city, and
that's right.
Hopefully among churches in general.
Well, when people come here or they hear about it, or I go talk about it somewhere, people come here. It's unusual in the city. And this city, and I think that's because of you and other people like you and with you who've been praying for this and working for this. But you were that for me, and now I am that for a lot of other people, as you are too. Wow. But having somebody to help you, like I think you would remember, and it would be good for you to verify that. For a couple of years, I just didn't think we were going to make it.
Oh, Jason, I remember. I couldn't believe it. You were every lunch. You're thinking, Jeff, I don't know if we're going to survive. And you were thinking, and I knew that y'all were from the start, even when y'all were tiny.
Oh, I didn't.
I did, Jason. I always knew you were because, God has wired you to do this as a leader and as a preacher.
Yeah.
You have one of the highest leadership gifts that I've seen.
Well, thanks for saying that. That means a lot to me.
And you're a great preacher.
Thank you. I think there are things that you can't see in yourself, right, that other people see in you. And I've needed people in my life to speak that into me. Yeah. I could probably lay on a counselor's couch and make them a lot of money, and they'd be excited because they're like, this guy has got a lot of, he's going to be with me for a long time. He needs some help.
Well, as you know, I certainly have needed and gotten a lot of psychological help, counseling help.
Me too.
Struggling with mental disease. Yeah.
Well, I think when I think about a young guy starting a church or a young guy pastoring a church, I think it helps them to hear from somebody like you or somebody like me. Woods Edge is, for those who may not know who are watching, it's a very large church. It's a very resource church. They use their resources to help a lot of other churches and have a lot of influence in the city and well beyond. And so I think sometimes, and Church Project has grown a lot, and we're now in a different place than we were.
Yeah, amazing impact.
And so I think people may look at us now and not really know the struggles, but it's hopeful for somebody who would be in the middle of a struggle to know that there are struggles.
Oh, yeah. Jason, we had started Woods Edge, and 3 years in, I had grown the church from 90 people on a Sunday morning to 60 people. So, I'd done a great job. Gail and I came back from vacation August of 96, and there were hardly anybody there. And everybody's wondering, is this church going to survive?
Yeah.
And fortunately, God used a man who came in and talked to us, and we made some changes. And it didn't happen overnight, but we began changing. So it was a milestone event for us.
It's wild to me that I can look back at something 15 years ago and it stick out in my mind. 15 years ago, let's just say 52 Sundays. That's 750, 780 Sundays, right, over 15 years.
Yeah.
So, I don't remember everything and however many house churches and First Wednesdays and other events, but I do remember moments that shaped and shifted our church.
I bet.
And you just mentioned one, and these things are, why do you think moments like that stick out over all the things that we're doing? 750 Sundays are for you, 30, however many Sundays that would be.
1,500, yeah.
Yeah, so how 30 years, yeah. Like, why do you think moments like that stick with us so much? We've done a lot, but we have these moments. What is it about a moment like that?
Well, there just seems to be some inflection points, some pivotal things.
Yeah.
And, for me, Jason, I bet I could name 8 or 10.
Yeah.
That, that was a watershed moment. And, some were very hard and some were pretty good. But
Yeah.
it's watershed moments.
I want to get into the mind of a guy who's starting a church, and then I want to get into the mind of a guy who's trying to stay, but maybe doesn't know if he can, doesn't want to. It's really hard.
Yeah.
And then I want to get into the life of a seasoned guy who, what do you do now? So let's go with the starter and the one who's staying, and then the seasoned guy who's made it through the trials, and what do you do? So the starter guy, you've been going at it a couple of years. You haven't seen a whole lot of hope. I mean, you said from 90 to 60 after 2 years?
After 3 years was really our nadir.
Okay. Tell the normal people who aren't smart.
Lowest
Didn't get it
point.
right. Yeah, okay.
Our lowest point was 3 years in. Yeah. We thought we were not going to make it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, okay. And I felt that way after a couple of years. I'm like, I don't know if this is going to turn. And then there was a turning point. What French, Latin word do you have for that?
Well, I don't know. But what I would say to them would be, unless you're sure that God wants you to give up, don't give up.
All right.
Don't give up too soon. It's hard, but most good things take endurance. In fact, if I could just elaborate a bit, Jason.
Please.
I'd say this, that God's given all of us a set of good traits in us, and I think that the best strength He's given me is endurance. Mm-hmm. Just sometimes you just need to endure.
Yeah.
Just not give up.
Yeah, you're right.
So certainly I think that's true of pastoring, because there are some hard moments.
Yeah.
And starting a church, you probably have a lot of financial pressure, both in the church and in your personal life, because you just don't have much money around to help you. And you're so small, you don't have many people there, and it's so hard when you feel like there's somebody there that you think is for you. And believes in it, and they leave.
Oh,
that's been so hard over the years, Jason. And to be honest, it's still a little bit hard. Even though we got thousands of people, it's still a little bit hard because you care about them.
Yeah, you're right.
And you think they care about you, and they're pretty free to leave sometimes. So don't give up. Don't take it too personal. If you can find an older pastor who will encourage you, that helps. Or if you can find a number of pastors to run with.
That's right.
But if you walk alone, it's so much harder. I walked alone too much, Jason.
Well, and part of that was by the put into the place where there weren't really many people around you who were open to that, right?
Yeah, just didn't think about it.
Well, I wouldn't have made it if I didn't have you and 3 or 4 other men who were really I had to create a structure for myself, because I left, had 2 admins who worked for me, and I don't know how many staff team that worked for me while I worked for you. And I had an office and stuff, and then the next week, I have nowhere to go.
You're on your own.
I have no schedule.
It's just
I have no place, and it was a scary time. And so I had to create some structure around for myself. A guy that we know gave me, he had literally, it was a closet in his, right down from Amerigo's where we just had lunch, in that same center. He had an upstairs, like a little alcove. It was a closet.
Really?
So he's like, you can put a desk up here. And so I knew I needed to get out of bed and go somewhere, because I was depressed and scared. So I created some structure for myself. And then part of my structure with my time, part of that was place, and part of that was people and time. So I set up a monthly lunch, like you and I did, but I did with the other 3 people too. And then I started adding some structure in my life, and that really sustained me.
Wow.
And so I always knew this week I'm gonna meet with one mentor who's gonna give me some wisdom and strength, and that sort of kept me going to the next week, which is crucial. But your perspective is so mentors are good, but somebody who's done it that you can speak with, like I had you. That was very helpful for me.
Well, let's elaborate that a second, Jason, because if someone meets you, they are striking with, this guy he's never had an insecure thought in his life. He's just, you're so confident, and in many ways you are. But I think it helps to know, for other church planters to know that you and I, that we weren't sure we were going to make it for a long time, and the jury was out.
You're right.
But just keep going. And even if you do fail, it's okay.
That's right.
Start again.
Yeah, I mean, no, you're right. That's a good thing to press into. And I was mortified.
Wow.
I had my own insecurities.
Yeah.
And, I like to tell people I needed so much sanctification that God made me a husband, a father, and a pastor, and a church planter.
Wow.
Because those first few years where the church wasn't growing,
Right.
God was really using that season to break me, humble me, make me need people's approval, affirmation less, acceptance less, because I had no idea how much rejection was ahead of me. I mean, when you sign up to be a pastor and a church planter, you're really signing up to be one of the most rejected people that you're going to personally know.
I know you got it. You got to take your approval from God, because it is. I think, Jason, looking back, that starting 3 church plants, one in Oregon, 2 here, one of which you failed. So during all of that time, Gail and my wife and I were, we were struggling financially,
Yeah.
and so many close friends left over the years. If I'd have known how hard it was going to be the next 20 years, I would have done it.
No way.
I thought, man, go get me a big church somewhere that would hire me as an assistant.
Totally.
Absolutely. But I'm so glad I did it now, Jason. It's just,
Right.
You shaped the culture from the start, and we need new church plants. Every
Yeah.
city needs new church plants. Houston needs a lot of new church plants.
Yeah, I know you're very involved in that. I am to a degree, and have been to a great degree for a while. You even more. They say 4 churches close for every new one that opens. I think part of the problem of the new ones that are opening is they're being designed just like the 4 that are closing.
Yeah.
I digress into a different ecclesiology if I go down that road.
Yeah.
But we do need more church plants. Therefore, we need more church planters.
We do.
So we're about to move from start to the guy who's staying or trying to stay. Before we leave the starting guy, what do you tell him? Give him 3 or 4 things. Hey, man, put this in your toolbox. You're going to use it every day.
Well, what would I say, Jason? The first 3 or 4. Get somebody who can lead some worship, because if you don't have good worship, well, you're not a good enough preacher for them to come just for good preaching.
That's right.
You need some good worship also. And, of course, you're going to need children and other things. But also I'd say this. Be confident about, who this church is going to be and what it's not. You may
Yeah.
grow and change some over the years, but there needs to be some non-negotiables.
Yeah.
And you might need to talk with a seasoned church planter and find out, if I was doing it over again, I'd do this.
Yeah.
And how I might do some things differently. I got a list of 30
That's
things
good.
I think I'd do differently. And then thirdly, Jason, I think the thing that I wish I would have done better at the start was just protect my own time with the Lord. I just would.
That's good.
I feel free to give a lot of time to be with the Lord each day now, and I'd be more free then. I just felt like I just had to work so hard.
That's good.
I'd protect that time.
Those are crucial things for a guy to hear. I would agree with those, and I would add, I like to say every redirection is an admission of ignorance.
That's right.
And not necessarily
Right.
stupidity, but, I know something now I didn't know.
Yeah.
And when people have chosen to cast their lot in with you and follow you, I think you only have 1 or 2 maybe redirections
Yes.
in your pocket. And I don't even know if you have those. And so I think I would tell a guy, you get convicted and convinced and clear before you
As
start.
much as you can.
What are you doing? Yeah, you're going to learn some things for sure, but thankfully we haven't redirected since we started. We've learned, we've made some slight adjustments, but the core of who we were was
Yeah.
pretty clear from the beginning. And I agree with you. I think if you don't have somebody outside of your church planning circle to spend time with, to speak to you, because that circle is going to be fractured more than you thought it might be.
It is.
All right.
Yeah, if you can get some older pastors or particularly church planners, spend a little time with them
Yeah.
and just try to ask good questions.
Yeah.
Come up with some good questions.
And my daily time with the Lord then was more crucial than maybe any other time in my life, other than some significant trials. I mean,
Wow.
he had to be enough for me,
Yeah.
and my time alone with him through church planning was crucial. All right, that's good word for starters. Now for guys who are staying, what's been the hardest thing for you about staying? I mean, it is easier now. I mean, I'm not worried if I'm going to get paid every week, but for many years I did. I'm not worried if I'm going to be able to pay our people every week that work with me, which that's a heavy, heavy burden.
That's a burden.
That a lot of, like when I worked for you, I never thought about it.
Yes.
And now somebody on our team not long ago said, hey, you know, I never think about some of the things that Jason has to think about. And so part of becoming a pastor or a church planter is I'm building a team here to go after this mission with me for the kingdom. And now I have responsibility for these people. And that's a heavy weight.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when there's not a lot of money, that wears on our soul.
Yeah. Yeah. That's probably the one thing that if you've never pastored, that you don't think about is that there's no one else in the church that's really going to wake up every day with the weight of financial responsibility of the church on your shoulders, and just paying all the bills and the expenses, and you have to have that wiring to be a pastor. And if that's not you, that's fine. That maybe you're wired to be a student pastor or some other pastor on the staff team. But if you're going to take the helm, you've got to bear the ultimate responsibility for the church before God in terms of accountability, but also just the financial weight. And, you know, for us, Jason, we were week to week paying the bills for at least 3 years. And I'd say 10 years before there was more money around. And from time to time, you know, we go through lean seasons and we think, oh, man, we need to get some more money here.
Same. Yeah, I mean that's been a thing. Part of staying for me, that's been difficult, is the maintenance of this. I'm in another world enough, the microchurch world, the house church world, the whatever world, that people, I think this is where they would point their finger at other churches. Right. But I find them, whenever they start to metastasize and become something together, they're all looking for resources too.
Oh yeah.
And so. Jesus tied money to the kingdom.
Yes. You know, I think also for staying, Jason, I'd make sure I get regular recharging of my soul. Yeah. Now, I get that to some extent, my daily time with the Lord, because that's an important part of my life daily. A weekly Sabbath is important. I'm pretty good about protecting my Sabbath. But I would only take 1 week at a time vacation, and that just... You know, after a week's vacation, I just was beginning to have some level of sanity. It wasn't enough. Yeah. And I did not start taking a longer break until I was 56. And I knew I was so tired that it wasn't sustainable. And I took 8 weeks off, and it was so life-giving for me that I started taking 6 weeks off. Now, I know if you're just starting a church, or if you've only been in the church 5 or 6, 7 years, and it's small, you probably can't do that. Yeah. But when you can... Try to take a season of recharging each year. And
that's good. I was talking with a young guy the other day about investments, and very close to me, and he said, "Yeah, my wife looks at what you or other people your age have, and I have to remind her." Hey, when they were our age, they didn't have this house. They didn't have these cars. And so I think the same thing for young pastors who may hear somebody say, take 8 weeks off. Yeah. I mean, I preached 50 out of 52 Sundays the first year. I didn't have anybody else to do it, really. Yeah. And that's not sustainable. But in the early years, you're going to have to pay some prices that later. Yeah. No, but I'm agreeing with you. At some point, though, you have to make the shift. I remember I took our team to a thing at Clear Creek that they put on years ago, and Bruce Wesley did a talk, and he was talking about, all the astronauts down there, the things they say, and he's like, an astronaut in my church was talking to us about the rockets launching, and he said, you cannot sustain the speed at which you start. And so our team leaned down the row and all looked at me when I said, because I was sustaining the speed from starting speed, years in. And so I think at some point, right, you made that shift of I have to move from being a church planter to staying here longer, and that means I got to put some things into my life, right, to keep me here?
Oh, yeah. No question. You got to know who you are, how you're wired, what you need. For example, Jason, I'm not a wild-eyed extrovert. I'm very comfortable on a stage speaking to hundreds and hundreds of people. Yeah. But I need a lot of alone time. And I can have a little bit of people time each day, but I just know that's my wiring.
Yeah, yeah.
And you have to know yourself and know what you need to recharge.
Yeah.
And I just say this also. It goes a long way if you've got a supportive wife. You know, I think, well, let me just say this, Jason. We've been married 45 years, but I'd say the first 13 years of our marriage was difficult. And we just didn't have some of the tools we needed. And I was a difficult, driven person who was a workaholic and struggled with OCD. And Gail had, you know, some challenges too. And fortunately, 13 years in, at a time of ministry crisis, we met with a businessman who walked us through a weekly meeting, and he quickly realized our biggest problem was not our ministry crisis, but our marriage.
Yeah.
And he could tell we were hurting, and we were not doing well. And he, by God's grace, God used this man, John Brickner, to change our marriage. And that helped so much. I mean, not that perfect marriage. We still are two strong-willed, sinful people. But it's so much better, and she is a support, and she believes in me, and every pastor needs that.
Yeah.
And if you're struggling with that, get help. Go talk to another pastor.
That's right.
Somebody, get help.
That's right.
Yeah.
No, that's good. You know, Jeff, your candidness about that, I think, has helped me and many other people be really candid about that. And I am now candid, too, that the first few years of Church Project were no fun as a pastor and as a spouse.
Yeah.
I mean, we had no money. Kids were a lot of kids, and they were all young. And it was I wasn't enjoying planting or pastoring. It was just all a struggle. In addition to my own, you know, my own drive, my own humanity, my own sinfulness that God was working out, and it wasn't fun. Our marriage wasn't fun. Brooke and I have talked about that, and now it's great. I mean, it's not perfect, like you said, but pastoring is a lot more fun.
It's a lot more
when
fun.
Marriage is fun.
It is, and just, you know, both for marriage and for pastoring, you know, just endure, you know, just don't give up too quickly. And, you know, back to pastoring, you know, just unless God clearly shows you, you need to go. And at times that happens. I mean, I've left churches before.
Yeah.
But otherwise, if you can stay at a church a long time and see it get some critical mass and get some momentum, it's worth it. It's worth it. I mean, thank God that you didn't give up after 2 years.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm so
God's
glad.
using Church Project around the world.
I'm so glad I didn't. I'm so glad you didn't. If you had given up, I would have been there, and I needed Woods Edge and you. You know, Jeff, there are guys who have stayed, and it's not good. I talk like the situation they're in. It's not good.
Yeah.
I talk to guys like this. I mean, we talk to guys, or I know you do too, from around the nation and world on a regular basis, and I'm dealing with people who they're struggling at the start, but you can sort of tell if they stay, it's going to get good at some point.
You're right.
And then you got guys who they've struggled for a lot of years. There's this guy that I'm connected to just through social media. We've talked, but we haven't been in person. But his church closed this past year after like 7 or 9 years or something. And it was really hard on him and his core group. But at some point, he just knew
It's time.
it's time.
Yeah.
You know, how does somebody know that? I mean, I don't know. I don't have an answer here. I'm trying to get a little help. And I would never be a guy who would tell somebody, hey, I think you should leave or shut the church down. I'm not going to say that. But there are guys who are wondering that. Should I just leave? Should I go somewhere else? Is it time? I mean, how do you help somebody like that?
Wow. Well, yeah, you have to be careful about telling someone to leave. But I can remember this, Jason. You and I have a mutual friend, unnamed pastor, very gifted man. And he was pastoring a significantly sized church. But it wasn't a healthy situation. He didn't start this church. He inherited it. And he didn't have the freedom to really lead.
Yeah.
And just the governance of this church, he was a preacher but not a leader.
Yeah.
And at some point, I said to him, I can remember speaking to he and his wife, I think you should leave.
Yeah.
This is not healthy. This is going to kill you. And it was destroying his wife.
Yeah.
And that alone is reason to do it.
That's right.
In fact, I was a co-pastor at a church once, and my wife was at a nervous breakdown. And that reason alone was enough. Okay, time for me to leave. I may be an endurer, but if my wife is crumbling, it's time to go. And thank God we did. And that's when we started Woods Edge, actually, out of that quagmire that we were in.
Yeah.
So there are times in which you might need an outside voice saying, it's time to go. You need to go.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think most people after the sacrifice they wouldn't make that decision lightly.
Right.
But I would not make it alone,
Yeah.
and I would
That's
make
a good point.
sure
Don't make it alone.
that you have somebody who's for you
Right.
and for the church.
Right.
Because if I have somebody who's really for me, they believe in me,
Yeah.
and they're for the church. They want more churches planted and want more great pastors, but they're saying to me,
Yes.
I think it's time. I'm going to really listen to that voice. You're for me. You're for the church.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, I'm kind of that way with advice and criticism in general, Jason. I want somebody to give me advice and certainly criticism who knows me
Yeah.
and loves me.
Yeah.
I mean, they're clearly for me. I don't really want people to give me advice if they don't know me very well.
Yeah.
I mean, and if they not really for me. But if you do, we have a responsibility. And I bet you said the same thing to this mutual friend of ours. I bet you told him also
I did.
It's time to leave.
I did.
Yeah.
And I think he just needed, he knew it, but needed permission. Because it's hard for somebody to let go of someplace at some point you were called to.
Yeah, that's true. It is. And also, financially, if you've got kids around, you need to support them. And
Yeah.
it's a risky thing to do. That's why my heart goes, I know yours does too, Jason. My heart goes out to these church planners who
Me
started.
too.
They're taking a risk. It takes courage.
Yeah.
And it may not work,
Yeah.
but you're in the arena.
Yeah.
Your Theodore Roosevelt quote on the wall.
Yeah, right.
You're in the arena. You're going for it.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be easy, but it'll be worth it if you can survive it.
Our podcast guy over there is every time you bang the table, he's
Oh,
like,
okay.
"Oh no!" So
I'll
I know.
stop banging the
You know, the
table.
funny thing is, every preacher that comes in here, we're all banging the table. We're all banging the
You're doing a
pulpit.
good job. Okay.
No, I'm having to learn. Yeah, we're all because we care about these things. Yeah, I think I told a pastor. In fact, the church where I worked before I came to work at Woods Edge, I told him I'd rather work at Macaroni Grill than work for you. I mean, it just got to a place to where it's like,
Why was it so hard there, Jason?
well,
What was it?
you know,
How did
I
you
had-
know you needed to leave?
I had so much, I was gaining so much clarity ecclesiologically, like how did Jesus design his church and why are we so far off? And an unwillingness to even, by anyone else in leadership, to even consider it. It was just continue to go through this maintenance stuff. And I don't want to maintain something. I want to move a church so that we can move a city for the sake of the gospel.
Yeah.
Or die.
Yeah.
You know, David served God's purpose in his own generation, and then he's going home. And so I just had more passion than I feel like anybody else there had, and I didn't want to be at a place. I'm not going to dishonor a place. I know if I'm not the person here that God's put in ultimate authority,
Yeah.
then I need to honor that.
Yeah.
But it ultimately got to it really intentional hurt towards me that I just said I'm not willing to remain in this anymore. And so I was so glad that the timing worked out right for me to leave. There are places where it's more harmful to stay.
It is. It is.
And
If you're being beat down, if the lead pastor, if you're working on a staff of a lead pastor and he is insecure and doesn't want to really see you succeed and do better than him, then your time there is limited because it's just not going to work.
I read a leadership book years ago written by a pastor who I won't name because theologically now his name is tainted with some stuff. But he just said, if you're at a place and the person that you work for isn't willing to entertain your vision for things, then he's probably not the person you want to work for. But okay, man, I tell you what, I know the time that you have and I have. What I want to do now, I want to keep talking, but we're gonna cut this one and move into 2. Is that okay? And you're still out of here when you need to get out of here,
Yeah, good.
because now we got to talk about staff and that work for us and they have different visions or whatever.
Okay.
So,
All
all right, hey, thanks for watching this. Here's what you can do: like this, subscribe to it, share it, and then follow up on part 2 here in a minute. We're gonna keep going, but you'll see this on the following week. Thanks for watching. Thanks for spending time with us today on the Rethink and Return podcast. Here's all we ask from you. Will you subscribe to this, share this, let other people know about it? That'll help us get the message out. Share this content with other people if it's helpful to you. We're grateful for you. See you soon.